All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our demo day for C12. We are the Latinx and AI mentor matching team. So for our project, we wanted to take on this additional application for Latinx and AI, helping them with their mentorship program. So my name is Tim McMacken. I'm a full stack web dev student here at Holberton, Tulsa. Actually relocated to Tulsa for the Holberton program after spending 7 of the last 10 years out in the Bay Area, working at a bunch of different startups in things like fintech, medical CRM, hardware startup, et cetera. I'm really excited to see all that Tulsa has to offer in terms of the technology ecosystem.
Hi, I'm Jill. I am an artist, a chef, and now a software engineer. My focuses are in UX, UI, and front-end web development. I am an Oklahoma native. I am a lover of podcasts, reading, and learning overall, and I love to problem solve.
Hi, my name is Gunter Pearson. I am a full stack and machine learning engineer. I've lived in the Tulsa area since around 2011. I'm very excited for the future of machine learning. My goal is to bridge the gap between software engineering and ML to improve collaboration and produce optimal results.
So for our project, as I was saying, we actually contacted Latinx and AI about building something out for their existing web application, which is really centered around a social media platform for their members. Now, Latinx and AI is a nonprofit at latinxandai.org that focuses on helping Latinx identified individuals get into machine learning and artificial intelligence. They do this by co-hosting workshops at the major conferences like NeurIPS, iClear, ICML, et cetera, as well as providing grants for travel, grants for research, and this new mentorship program where they match folks that are further along in like academia and engineering in machine learning and artificial intelligence with folks that are newer in their career or newer in academia to provide that mentorship to help them really get started and get a voice in the development of AI. So in us building this new module for their existing application, we used a lot of different technologies. For my part on the back end, I really focused on using GCP for our hosting, Linux on GCP for that, and then Firebase for our DB and routes.
So I worked on the front end and I used Figma for our designs and mockups. I used diagrams.net for our user flows and then React and Redux for the front end build.
So I was in charge of creating the matching algorithm. So I used Python's natural language toolkit for the text data cleaning and pre-processing. And I used scikit-learn's TF-IDF vectorizer for the vectorization of the text, as well as the k-means clustering for the matching.
Okay, so since this was an existing application, we wanted to get a bird's eye view as well as look into the nitty gritty of how this application operates. Since we are adding in new functionality. So what you're seeing right now here is the user flow of the existing application. The grayed out boxes are places we're not touching, and then the blue areas on the screen are the new pieces that we're going to be implementing. So this is a closer look of the user sign up flow. You can see here, this is like a create user form. So through here, it's got all of the basic questions. And then at the bottom, you can see where we are implementing the mentorship program questions application. Once they get through the mentorship application and they create user flow, they get into the dashboard. And we are implementing a mentorship program button that's going to take them to the external website for Latinx and AI so they can get further information about the mentorship program, as well as fill out the application if they missed it the first go. And lastly, this is an overview of the mentor and mentee sign-up flow. So it's just breaks down the different questions that we are asking them. And then once they get done with that, it will take them back to the dashboard. So here, this is a mock-up that we put together of the new user signing up. So they're going to be going through just a basic sign up first to get initiated into the system. Once they get that signed up, then they're going to be coming into the create user flow. Here is where they're going to put basic information like job title, affiliation, their country, state, and city, and whether or not they are Latinx or ally. So once they get through this basic part of the application, filling out their application, It's going to take them into a questionnaire that's going to ask them whether or not they want to be participating in the mentorship program. So there they can answer either yes or no, and then it will take them in whether or not they want to be a mentee or mentor. So here you can see the new implementation here asking, and then the mentee or mentor question, and they can click one of those and it will take them into an external application. There is a link at the very top right where they can go into the external website for more information. And here they're just going to fill out more information regarding the mentorship program. Once they get through this, it's going to pull up on the screen 3 different people that they have matched with as mentors. Then they get to choose from these 3 people which one will work best for them. And then it will show them a contact information for this mentor so they can get started with the mentoring process. So you can see here the 3 people that popped up after this user has put in their information. And once they select, it's going to just pull up the contact information for this mentor. And then they're just going to be brought back into the user dashboard. At the top, you can see the new mentorship program button, what will take them to the external webpage. Okay, so for the front end build, I use the React library, which is a component-based web application that we use for our pages. We also use templating and dynamic markup. I also used Material UI, which was a really neat package to go along with React to make CSS a breeze with their templates. And then finally, I use Redux. It is holding all of our data. It creates an application-wide state for our components, so that way they can send and fetch data and access data as necessary. And then instead, as opposed to just passing properties around.
Great. So for my portion, again, working on the back end, dealing with an existing application and legacy code made it so that we really knew, like, we're going to be on GCP and we're going to be using Firebase as our DB. So I spent a lot of my time working with both the client side SDK and the admin SDK. For client side, taking all of that great data that Jill was getting from the user, especially in terms of all of that mentee mentor application, which builds our matching criteria to help match those folks up. And in the admin SDK, things like account creation, authorization, getting the data to flow into the DB in a secure way that protected their information, and making sure that it passes through our data passing API. So the focus here was, of course, building something out that was able to handle the routes for all of our data in a secure way, but also was reusable. So this idea of decoupled architecture, that we could build a program here for mentor matching that was able to take in information and do dynamic matching through Gunter's algorithm on the data we got from the front end, so that in the future, this is reusable. If the applications change for mentee and mentor with new questions or sort of new vectors of matching, if this is used by another organization in the future for matching criteria for their own mentorship program, we wanted to make sure that it evolved from its original incarnation as just, you know, Python scripting that was handling specific fields and forms to something much more dynamic that could do NLP and do this matching criteria over time. So I take all that great data that Jill harvests on the front end, I put it in JSON and hand it off to Gunter on the back end, and then get it back so that we can represent it to that user for that optionality.
Sorry. All right. So for my part of the project, I was in charge of creating a matching algorithm using machine learning that matches mentees to mentors based on similar interests. So since computers don't understand text, only numbers, before I could run any type of matching algorithm, the first thing I had to do was convert this text data into arrays that represent each word. So this is where natural language processing comes in, or NLP for short. So before we can use natural language processing, the first thing we have to do is tokenize the data, remove stop words and punctuation, as well as stemming. For those who don't know what stemming is, it's taking a word down to its root. So for example, challenging becomes challenge, running becomes run, and so on. So once we have the data in the correct format, it is now time to vectorize it. So for this, I use scikit-learn's TF-IDF vectorizer. The first step is to train the vectorizer. So I feed it all of the text data so they can build up a vocabulary of words and then create a corresponding array for each word. Now, once I have the vectorizer trained, I can then convert the text data into arrays. So now that I have the text data represented as arrays, it's time for the matching. So for the matching, I used scikit-learn's k-means clustering algorithm, which is a type of unsupervised learning. So in the plot above, all the dots are either a mentee or mentor. And the closer one dot is to another, the more similar they are. So the goal of the k-means clustering algorithm is to group together or cluster mentees and mentors that are the most similar. So in the example above, we can see that there's 4 clusters. So if everything goes correctly with the k-means algorithm, it should move 4 centroids into the middle of each of these clusters and assign all the mentees and mentors in that cluster to the group. And once I have all the mentees and mentors assigned to a cluster, I then send that data back to Tim.
Great. And then we, of course, pass it back to Jill on the front end and let the mentees pick their mentors. So thank you, everyone. We're Latinx and AI mentor matching. So for Q&A in the Zoom chat, if you want to just use the raise your hand icon, or folks in the audience, literally raise your hand, we can do some Q&A. Or if we explained it oh so well, thanks a lot and catch you later. What's up?
My question was, can you hear me?
Yeah.
My question was, when you did the mentee and the mentors, I noticed that all of them took the cluster. I had 2 questions. My first question was, why did you use, like, they looked like they were almost the same at first. Like when you first looked at it, it almost looked like they were almost all the same. And my second question was, how was they able to match up with, it looked like just 4, was it just 4 people?
For the centroids, is that what you're referring to?
I'm talking about the mentors. Was it just 4 mentors?
No. That was just a small representation of our total. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just for visual purposes. Yeah, I
okay,
kept down
for us,
before.
so we could understand what was going on.
Right.
Okay.
The last cohort had, I think, about 70 mentors and about 150 mentees.
Oh, okay. Because I was, when I looked at it, it all looked kind of, it's like the look, I'm getting older. So first, when I first looked at it, it all looked all the same. I was like, okay.
The other cool thing about that, like it's a 2D representation to kind of show how the data works. But because of the matching criteria we're using around, like, do you speak the same language? Are you interested in learning or mentoring the same things? It's actually 7 dimensions of matching, which we can't visually represent.
Right.
So.
Okay. And you went to Mike back.
I have a question as well. Hi, Kristen Lloyd here. My question is, you mentioned working with a company for this project, and I was wondering, are there unique challenges that come with working with someone that already has a product that you're integrating into?
Tim?
Sure, absolutely. So when you're taking on something existing, it's very different from what we've done here, right? Like most of what we've learned in school is building from scratch and really knowing every line of code that you wrote or that like you and your partner wrote, and you understand the whole thing. When you go out into the world and you're working at a company, you're usually not starting from scratch. Most of us are not going to be the first engineering hire at a company. So you have to get to know a code base, get to know what packages and what platforms they're using, and then adapt yourself and your style to fit into that. And so I think with this, we spent a lot of time in the code base and understanding the technologies that were already selected for this project. None of us had dealt with Firebase before, but that's what this project used. And so we had to learn enough of that to be able to work with it with our existing JavaScript and Express knowledge.
Yeah, and with the design, we try to honor their design as much as possible, so it doesn't look out of place. So definitely sticking with that concept.
Gunter's is from scratch, though. He built a recommendation engine himself, which is awesome. Anyone else? Internet world? Zoom folks? Cool.
We're good.
Hold on, before you go, man, I have one more question. Because you asked that.
Yeah.
Because you did say that when you get to the world that there are other engineers who are
It's gonna obviously depend on your work environment, wherever you get started, or wherever you go. But like a lot of times you're joining a company that already exists and is our product. And so it might be that your first several months as an engineer is like familiarize yourself with our code base, right? Like I know people that have gone through other programs similar to Holberton, and the first few months of their job was like, here's our code base, get to know it so that you match our style of coding, like our linting rules, our style of coding, that when you push your first component, that it doesn't break anything in the existing code. And that's why it's so important to have things like testing branches where you're not just pushing to production on your first day as a new engineer. Like you have to get to know the system, you have to code in their style. You might be using something that you never touched, right? Like you might go to a company that still uses PHP or something, and you're like, you have to now learn PHP and write in that instead of like we learned React, right? So there is a lot of times where you go somewhere and there is legacy code that you have to get to know, and you can't just say, well, you know, I know this framework, why don't we do it in this framework? And people are like, well, because that would take millions of dollars of man hours to redo our entire code base to use the framework that you as the newest hire wants to use. So like that kind of push-pull struggle, sometimes you have that out in industry, but you'll definitely deal with code that other folks have written in different languages than you've used that now you get to adapt to. So it's about figuring it out and figuring out how you plug into that system.
Man, thank you so much. That's a really good answer. Thank you so much. I mean that.
Happy to.
Thank you, guys.